Welcome back, everybody, to Seed Time and Harvest, where we've been learning how to grow our food practically. And Sharice, what did we talk about last time?
Well, the last time we were here, we started with the eggplant, right. And we looked at compaction. We talked about how to check your soil fertility where you are. Instead of taking your soil to a lab, you can check certain things at home. And we look at compaction in the sense of the roots. We looked at the root ball of the plant because we know that if the soil is too hard, then we will not have sufficient root growth. And so continuing on where we left off, what advice have we received from the Word regarding growing food?
Well, last week we looked at the fact that the seed needs to be planted in good ground.
Yes.
And we're going to add on that. We're going to build on that. In Mark chapter 4, and you can see your slide, Mark chapter 4, verse 28.
Okay.
It says, "For the earth bringeth forth fruit of herself, first the blade, then the ear, after that the full cord in the ear." And we're going to focus in this segment on the earlier part where it says, "For the earth bringeth forth fruit of herself."
Right.
And adding to what we built on before, that earth being good ground, that good ground will bring forth fruit of herself.
Right.
So we need to have good soil, and that's what we're going to continue to talk about.
Yes.
Sharice, that root that we looked at, what plant was that?
Well, that was the eggplant. And today we're going to look at eggplant because we haven't done that. In Jamaica, we called it the garden egg because, of course, it looks a lot like an egg when the fruit just starts coming down.
Okay.
So today we're going to tell you everything we know about growing eggplants so that you can have success with your plants. And so there are several ways you can start your seeds.
Yes.
Yes. I'll mention the Ziploc bag, which we've talked about quite often in the past, and we've had success sprouting our eggplants from using this method. What other way can we start our seeds?
Well, we can also use a seed tray or start them in trays.
Okay.
And, what we did is we purchased a tray from the dollar store. So we're going to use this tray here, and we also have purchased some starting mix.
Right.
And can you tell us what are the ingredients?
Okay, in this starting mix you have peat moss, you have horticultural vermiculite, you have perlite, wetting agent, and lime for pH balance. So these are some things that you can find at the dollar store or Dollar General, or really for low cost, that you can start your garden where you are if you're growing on a budget. So as Jose mentioned, you can use a seed tray. So we're just going to fill this up with some soil, and of course we know eggplants love water, and we need to get this soil moist before we put our seeds in it. And another way you can start your eggplants is by planting them directly in the ground, because of course you don't want to transplant your seedlings too much. You don't want to disrupt the root growth. You want to make sure that you have sturdy plants. All right, so while Jose is waiting that, I'll just mention a few things that you need to know to have success growing your eggplants. As you see, he's watering. At one point we thought when the rain started that our eggplants were getting too much water, right? But then we found out that's a good thing. And why is that?
Because the eggplants do love water. Now here we have in this mixture peat moss. Peat moss is the first ingredient, as Sharice was reading the ingredients.
Yes.
And peat moss will make your soil acidic. And because it is made with mostly peat moss, they added the lime for the balancing of that pH. Also, it has vermiculite and perlite, which are good to allow for drainage.
Right.
Now we want to make sure that this is well soaked in. I feel the water is underneath it. So I'm pushing it down so that the water can go all in.
So the peat moss is going to just absorb the water, and it's going to swell and retain the moisture.
Can I see that fork over there, Sharice?
Sure.
Let's use some tools here that we have in this garden. This fork is used for aeration, and we're going to use that right now. No need to get my hands too dirty when I have a tool.
You have the tools already.
Now
All
I'm
right,
going to add some
so
more
add some
water.
more water to that. So many people, when they are using peat moss, you can have a container and you can just pour some water on your peat moss so that it will absorb the moisture so that it's easier to work with. All right? And then as Jose is doing that, I'm going to get my seeds. And when you're starting your eggplants, of course, you want to make sure that you have a good germination rate. So when we do our seeds, we're going to put two or more seeds per hole so that we have a good success in the germination of these seeds.
Now it seems as though it is dry because there's a lot of peat moss in this mixture, but it's just absorbing all the liquid, and it almost feels like a jelly in here because of the water. We poured out the whole vial in here of water into this. And so it is moist. All right, and so would you plant the seeds into this?
Well, with your eggplants, you're going to go, again, your instructions for planting is on the back of your seed starting mix. So here we see this is going to go 1/4 inch deep. And we're going to put 2 seeds in each hole to make sure that we have a good rate of germination. All right, so I'm just going to get 2 seeds. We're going to drop them in this hole, cover them. And the peat moss is already moist, so we're not going to add any more water to that. All right. And what are some of the conditions, Jose, that are needed for our eggplant to be successful? We've already mentioned that they need a lot of water. What else can we add?
They also want a good source of nitrogen and those potassium and potash, which is potassium, and what was the other one again?
Phosphorus.
Phosphorus.
So your
yes.
NPK. It needs rich soil. It needs a good balanced mixture for your eggplants to grow because, of course, they're heavy feeders. And also, they need sunshine. Like most of your vegetables, they need a good source of sunshine, at least 6 to 8 hours.
Right.
Right. Or you can add more if you want. Here in Florida, they'll get plenty of sunshine, which is needed for the plants to grow.
Another thing about starting them in pots like this is that they don't tolerate much cold. So you don't want to put them out in the cold. You want to start them in and then bring them out when you're sure that there's no more frost.
Right. So these are warm weather.
40 degrees, anything below 40 degrees, they will die. So
Okay.
you don't want to bring them in the cold.
So that's good to know. So these are not good for a winter crop. These are your summer crops.
No.
All right, excellent. So we're just going to put this mixture right here, and we're going to put it in the sun, and then we'll have some beautiful eggplants. Now, when we're going to get ready to transplant our eggplants from this pot into a larger container or into the soil, into the ground, we're going to need rich soil. So let's demonstrate what we would do for our soil mixture.
Yes, because even though that is a good seed starter, that is not the ideal soil for the eggplant. You want to have rich compost. And so right here what we have is the same mixture is in here that we bought before, that we got at the store.
This is a raised bed garden mix.
Yes.
So this has a lot of compost, and you can tell that it's rich. The difference between the two is with your potting mix, the soil needs to be loose. The soil needs to be loose, well drained for your seeds to germinate. It will hold that moisture, the peat moss will hold that moisture, and it will hold the warmth. So that's a good medium for germination. But when your plant starts growing, when they start taking off, they're going to need rich soil. They're going to need a lot of nutrients. And so we're going to add majority compost.
So this is a majority compost in this raised bed mixture. It also has husk from coconut. It also has some perlite.
Right, and you can see some decomposed forest humus, like garden particles in here. And it's a rich soil, and as we talked about last week, you'd see the soil is workable, and under slight pressure it still holds. And the color it's a beautiful color for growing anything.
Now your fork is also a great tool for aeration, and you want to make sure that you are tilling this before you are planting into it, because you don't want to have too much compaction.
Right.
Even though you want it to be firm.
And as you mentioned, aeration, we know that the microorganisms in the soil, they're depending on that oxygen for them to thrive. And also it provides space for the roots to be able to expand.
Here's another
through the soil.
good mixture. It's not as good as the one we just had. We'll add some of it, but it has peat moss, which is the main thing that it composes, and it also has worm castings.
Right.
So we're going to add some of this as well.
And the reason why we're doing this is because eggplants are heavy feeders, so they are going to need a lot of nutrients in order for you to get that good fruit.
Right.
Your typical eggplant will give you 4 to 6 fruits, but if your soil is fertile, then you can have a lot more. Your plants grow up as between 3 to 4 inches, 3 to 4 feet high, and will give you 6 or more fruits per growing season if given the right condition.
So this is also a different kind of compost. So you want to have varieties of compost mixed into it. You want the more compost, the more organic matter. So that's what you want to feed your plant with.
Okay.
But we also are going to add some more nutrients into this. We're going to add some. I have here a cup of alfalfa meal. And Sharice, what is this alfalfa meal good for?
Well, the alfalfa meal is going to be a good source of your protein, and it also is going to have some potash. For your nitrogen, protein. We need protein from our eggplants, but it has nitrogen and it's going to give us potash. And we see here our kelp meal is also going to give us a good source of potash as well. I'm going to add some to that.
And also all of these have some form of phosphate as well. These are the slow releasers. So that means that it takes time, but this is more ideal for the plant because you don't have the burning effects of those high-end fertilizers that are also synthetic.
Right. So when you're going to start your garden, it's recommended for your slow-release fertilizers at least a month or 2 prior to planting. You want to work your soil. Put those in your soil, so as soon as you're ready for planting, then the nutrients will be available for your plants to be able to absorb. And here he's adding azomite, which is a micronutrient. And this is also rock phosphate, provides phosphate in your soil as well, and provides a lot of the micronutrients that are needed for sturdy plants, for your fruit growth, and for your stem development.
So right here, this is very rich soil. This is what the eggplant is going to thrive in, and this is what we want. We see here it already has some perlite in it, but we also have a little bit extra, just a little more. And we also have, you can buy worm castings, that's good. Worm castings on its own, and it's also a good source of nitrogen.
And feeding your eggplants, providing a good, consistent watering will also help to increase your blossom, increase fruit production. It will prevent your blossoms from falling off because a lot of times the eggplants blossoms will just fall if the soil is not moist enough. And it will also provide more fruit. So your watering is necessary and your nutrients are necessary for you to have a productive plant.
So does the eggplant have anything when we're planting it that it is going to fight with?
Well, eggplant has no known enemies, but it grows best when planted. It has few good companions. One of those are the beans, because potato beetles are attracted to your eggplants more than they are to potatoes, but they don't like the beans. So a companion for the eggplant would be your beans. and also your basil. Because of the smell of the basil, this is a licorice basil. Smells really good. And because of the smell of the basil, it will also deter your pests from attacking your eggplants. And flea beetles also attack the eggplants, and that can be deterred by planting it close to catnip.
Yes, thank you.
Okay?
So you see there you have, this is our presentation for today. And as you see, we're growing together as we're growing food.
All right, happy planting, everyone.